the best we can do is to find great people or to have great people and support great people. And they'll do the jobs better than we can sitting here in our offices. You know, I'm very mindful of the fact that, like, what's important to me isn't really what matters. What's important to our clients, our communities, and our colleagues is what matters. Because I've always believed if you take care of the business, it will take care of you. You shouldn't be looking forward for the business first of what you need. You should be looking what your markets need, what your people need, what your communities need, what your clients need. And if you satisfy them, then you'll have a business.
Benztown President Dave Chachi Dennis loves radio and all of his radio friends.
Hey, Chachi.
Hey, everybody.
Because Chachi loves everybody.
My next guest purchased his first radio station for $50,000 when he was a sophomore in college. 12 years later, he sold his company to Cumulus for $258 million. He is the chairman of the Nielsen Advisory Council and the chairman of the RAB board. He's been inducted into the New Jersey Broadcasters Hall of Fame and is the recipient of the Ward L. Qual Leadership Award and has been named to Radio Inc.'s Most Powerful People radio list multiple times. And now he's making headlines again, this time for acquiring Alpha Media and its 200-plus stations across the country. Please welcome the CEO of Connoisseur Media, Jeff Warshaw. Jeff, thank you so much, man, for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. I just need to correct. I'm now the outgoing chair of the RAB.
Okay.
Eric Tellum is the new chair.
Well, thank you for all the fine work you've done. Obviously, you know, Erica, we're huge fans of hers and big fans now of Mike. I got to start off by saying you are in a very elite group here. You're only the second person that has come back to the podcast a second time. The other was our good friend Jeff Smulyan. He's been on twice, and now...
Oh, my God, Jeff and I have literally played telephone tag like 5 times today.
He is such a good guy, and we had him on a second time. If you've not already heard Jeff, I interviewed him a little bit over a year ago. I highly recommend it. It's episode 49, and you can learn all about Jeff's career, everything from growing up and buying his first radio station, I think I want to say 17 years old, to where he is almost to today, up to Connoisseur. But now so much has happened in the last couple months. I wanted to catch up again, and I'm so grateful for you taking the time to do this. And I also, before we jump in with the questions, I'm just incredibly grateful for what you do for the industry, and I see this as, in a lot of ways, as being a white knight and coming in and reinvigorating us and recharging the industry. So I'm really excited about the acquisition, and so thank you on that part. My first question is, you mentioned that this deal has been in the works since Alpha went through the Chapter 11 process a few years back. It's a long game to play. What kept you in the mix all these years, and why did this finally feel like the right moment to pull the trigger?
I wouldn't say it was really in the works that whole time. My first attempt to doing something with Alpha was around the time of them emerging from bankruptcy. I just couldn't take no for an answer. If nothing else, I get a persistence award. Finally, the stars aligned, and it was the right timing for the company and the right timing for me on Connoisseur.
I cannot remember who had said this, but my mom used to tell me quite often a similar story, in that most people give up too soon, and they throw up the flag and they stop. And so that perseverance is so incredibly important from a success standpoint.
Yeah, I think having a joyful relentlessness is a good way to go about being an entrepreneur.
Well, it has worked out for you. You've taken Connoisseur now from 11 stations to over 200 virtually overnight. And this is not at all your first rodeo. You've obviously owned large groups before, but that's a massive leap, certainly from what you have been doing as of recent. What are the biggest challenges that you're bracing for in bringing these two cultures together? And how are you going to preserve the local first magic that's been such a big part of your success with your existing fleet of stations?
Well, I think the people in the markets all want to have big local presences, right? They all want to have local talent. They want to be involved in their communities. They want sales staffs that are large, well-trained, and enthusiastic. They want to feel like they are the number one local media companies in their markets. So it's not a challenge to get people excited about executing the kind of plan that we have in our markets. And in many cases, the alpha stations have been kind of playing the game as we have. They have strong market positions and happy and successful employees and very strong rated stations that are involved in their communities. So it's not like we're trying to get people to do things that they don't want to do. The culture of being dedicated to our markets, being a great place to work, providing tremendous programming with local talent, the culture is already there for that. We plan on, in most cases, continuing along the same lines of what the company's been doing.
I think you've done such a great job at Connoisseur of really balancing that local, but also being smart about some of your syndication, certainly what you've done with Anna and Raven, for example. And so I commend you for that, because I don't think it's easy, but you know the right recipe, and it's obviously been very successful for you in Connecticut and New York.
Yeah, well, great programming is usually great programming in other markets. It isn't just in the markets that programming is originating. That having been said, it is a balance. You want to have certain day parts that are local, that are talking about what's going on in the community. You want to do your best to make your syndicated shows sound as local as you can. You want to make sure that you have street teams and vehicles and being part of the events that are important in your community. And when the community needs to come together and needs help, you want to make sure that you have enough personnel and enough resources to service that community. And that is, from my perspective, not only good business, but it's our responsibility.
I couldn't agree more. And in so many ways, I find it very enlightening, because it's how I grew up in the business, where we did have that local presence. And obviously I'm in the network side of the business, and I want to see, syndicated national content grow. And I do think that there is a right way to do it, but it also can't come at the expense of serving your community, which you guys obviously do a phenomenal job of. And I know you're very active. I had also heard that you spent a lot of time when you were doing the due diligence on this, and literally went into a lot of these markets, kind of checking things out to get to know the people and get to know the markets themselves. Do you look at that, and we know scale matters, and you know better than anyone, because you've been there and gone through that. Do you look at those markets holistically, similar to the way that Trader Joe's does when they go in to really analyze a market? I know that Ed Christian was kind of similar in that he looked for certain aspects, demographics, was it a college town and so forth. Is that in your calculus at all?
Well, first off, with Alpha, we're not like hand choosing each market, right?
Right.
And there's a tremendous variety of different markets and different operations within Alpha. And some of them are kind of more traditional connoisseur type markets, where there's large staffs with a lot of radio dollars in the mix and full street teams and presences in the market, and most day parts being live. And there are other markets that are much smaller, and the economics are very different. And so it isn't the same thing as, it's not as curated by market. But the fact is that sitting here in Connecticut, I'm never going to be the best person to run the local market. It's going to be up to the local management. And the single most important thing that we need in our markets is to have talented, hardworking, enthusiastic people that take their job seriously and are committed to their communities and their clients and to their coworkers. And that doesn't change. The best we can do is to find great people, or to have great people and support great people. And they'll do the jobs better than we can sitting here in our offices. I'm very mindful of the fact that, like, what's important to me isn't really what matters. What's important to our clients, our communities, and our colleagues is what matters. Because I've always believed if you take care of the business, it will take care of you. You shouldn't be looking forward for the business first of what you need. You should be looking what your markets need, what your people need, what your communities need, what your clients need. And if you satisfy them, then you'll have a business. And if I don't, then it doesn't matter how much I demand. I'll end up in the same place as so many others where there's no business left and all you're able to do is cut until you can keep yourself out of bankruptcy. Unfortunately, that has been happening way too much in our industry and other media businesses. We try to do different. I mean, if I don't do something different, right, I'm going to end up in the same place as everybody else that hasn't been successful. So rather than me saying, I need $2 million this month, it becomes more like, what are we in a position to do to help you have more success and this month and more importantly, next quarter and next year? Because there are so many things that this industry does for short-term benefit that are absolutely to the detriment of the industry and their operations in the long term. It is unquestionable that there are things that many companies do to make their number, to stay alive, unfortunately, to maybe make one more bonus. And while that's happening, the fundamentals of what makes this a great business are being abandoned. And, I hear horror stories that very many of the companies do as far as strategies for making a little bit more money or hyping one part of their business for investors to the detriment of their long-term survival. And I would rather not be in the business than have to operate that way.
This is going to oversimplify what you just said, but it's very much like a farmer. If you do not take care of that soil and amend it every year and till it, the fruits and the vegetables, whatever it is that you are growing on that soil isn't going to be as big the next year. And you're not going to have...
I think it's like my dad used to tell the story about the guy that had a horse and he thought the horse was eating too much. So every day he fed it just a little bit less. And he was very sad that the horse died just when he got him to the point where he didn't have to feed him at all.
That's a great analogy, analogy. You were public in your effort to acquire Cumulus a couple years back, and things have played out, obviously, the way that they have, which is really exciting. But looking back, did that experience teach you, and did it shape the way that you approached the Alpha acquisition?
I think every deal is different. Every cast of characters is different. Timing matters, and people's priorities can often dictate, what the result is. And in the case of Cumulus, my offer was never really taken seriously. Nobody had any interest in selling. Whether or not it was too high a price or too low a price, it never really made it the light of day because it was they were not in any way interested in my opinion, maximizing value for their shareholders. We talked about last time recovery. And in recovery, there's a great saying. You say, when you're trying to help somebody, right? You say, you can carry the message, but you can't carry the mess.
It's a great saying. That is a great saying. You have this incredibly fascinating mind, and I know a mentor of mine is a good friend of yours, and you're a mentor of his as well, Peter Kozan, and I really think you guys have a lot of similarities in that your financial minds I find so brilliant, and honestly, in our last podcast, tried to understand a lot of the financial, how you've done the certain things that you've done financially speaking, but then you also have this incredibly programming sense to you, radio operator sense to you, which I think is unique in a lot of ways and has been a fascinating combination and probably a reason for your success. And I could be wrong. I obviously don't know, a lot of the executives in the space, but I do find that unique about you.
Well, thank you. I mean, I do enjoy talking programming with the programming people, and I do enjoy talking sales with the salespeople. And, believe it or not, I actually do enjoy talking with the bankers and financial people. I'm very comfortable in that area. It's obviously been one of the major reasons for things that I've done in my career has been having somewhat of a level of knowledge and sophistication about finance, more, that might not be consistent with being a radio operator.
It's a phenomenal combination, and I find it very fascinating. And also, I'm hopeful in that you're making this acquisition and the local investment that you're going to make and investing in the horse and feeding that horse. And if we zoom out, for a bit, people, I think, in this industry trust you, and they're really looking at you now they've always looked at you as a leader, but now that's been magnified. Do you think that this is going to help shape where the industry, this acquisition that is going to help shape where the industry goes from here and how we look at the future in terms of industry wide? Will this hopefully lead to not only more acquisitions from yourself, but people are looking at this as financial people, and you have a lot of respect in that community going, hey, Jeff's all in here. Maybe we should be all in too.
Nah, I don't think so.
No?
I think people are like, why does Jeff think that he can be successful? Let's see if he can do it. There's a high degree of skepticism. Most of the public companies and the companies that have debt that's traded publicly are trading at, very, very substantial discounts to par on the debt. There's very little equity in the business. It's not like, unfortunately, one person making an acquisition or one company making an acquisition is going to get people to look at everyone's balance sheets in a different way. The business is extremely challenged right now. It's having a very, very weak year for the industry. Lots of reasons for that. I'm really grateful. We're having actually a decent year, but I know that's we're just happen to be lucky this year so far, and a lot of hard work from great people that we've got. But I think, I think if we're successful, hopefully then people will start thinking that maybe doubling down on local is the best way to keep our business and grow it. Right now, most people are really concerned about getting through their next quarter and not really thinking about growth as much as making sure that they're, keeping themselves afloat and, trying to preserve their operations as best they can. And
in full candor, we're going through here. Our revenue is mostly generated by network barter, and it's an incredibly tough marketplace this year. And so it's, led to some challenging decisions. It's not easy by any stretch, but you are an inspiration when we look at it. And I think the announcement of it really has recharged the industry and got a lot of us excited. And now with, Brigade behind you, your financial partners, and your track record, you obviously have smart strategic growth. It seems like you're outpacing the marketplace there locally. I think your ethos and the investment in the community is really paying off. Could there be more acquisitions for you in the future?
Well, Brigade is my lender. They're a lender to a number of radio companies. If we're successful and creative, we could probably figure out some more acquisitions to do. But it's not because anyone's writing checks for us. One of the trades had some speculation about Brigade and being a partner, and it's like, they're our partners because they're tied to our success to a large degree in Connoisseur. But they're not a partner in the traditional sense like I had with the Perot family or with Farallon or with Abry in the day and a firm called Tinicum. They were really pure equity partners, and that's not what Brigade is. They're great. They're lenders, and they are great partners to have as we continue to try to build the business. They're just not like an equity partner, like writing checks alongside of us.
Understood. So it's more of a traditional banking type model.
Yes.
That they're okay. So you've got there's. Do you feel that pressure, or is it something like every time that Bruce Springsteen gets on stage, he's kind of used to it now? But you are on stage. Are you feeling that anxiety, or I guess it's a combination of anxiety, the butterflies in your stomach, and some adrenaline?
I don't do anything. It's up to the people in the markets to have the adrenaline. I just, there's not that much I can do. All kidding aside, I feel much more than a sense of pressure to make money. I feel pressure that we have properties that our communities need, and we have a lot of employees that are trying to feed their families. We have clients that are relying on us to help them build their businesses. So that's an awesome responsibility. And that's the type of thing that keeps me up at night. I know that all I can do is control what I do and say. So I'm going to do the best I can. But the responsibility of having these radio stations is because my success impacts so many people. It impacts my markets and my employees and clients and my partners. And so it is, I don't feel like that I have to perform like a monkey, that like if I don't dance right, that people are not going to throw coins at me. I feel like it's a responsibility and I take it very seriously.
I absolutely love that. And is that what gets you back into the ring? Because you could have, and we talked about this in your last podcast, you could have ridden off into the sunset 40 years ago, 30 years ago, when you had your, massive, when Cumulus paid you $250 million. And
it was 25 years ago.
25, sorry.
Don't make it any older than it is, Chachi, okay?
My apologies. But you continue to come back in and really fight in the ring. And what drives you? Is it the people that drives you to do that, the community?
Yeah, I mean, I love there's so many things. I love working with the people. I love doing exciting innovations in our industry. I love the action. I love seeing people make money. I love our clients and our communities like really benefiting from what we do. My wife said to me the only time she was ever worried about me is when I didn't have enough to do. And so I love the work. I think that the industry deserves to have people that are passionate about the industry and about local media. I'm very passionate, not just about radio. I think we are in the position to be the premier local marketing companies, local media companies in our markets. Before this call, I had a guy in that's an expert on local, outdoor and signage in malls. And I'm talking to him about how we're going to forge partnerships so that we can sell that alongside with our digital and our radio and the events that we do. I believe, and I've said it before, that in 5 years' time, if we play our cards right, in our markets, we will be the one-stop shop for radio and digital and outdoor and cable and events and creative. And radio has the most respected and trusted salespeople. We should have the largest sales forces, and that we should be the place to go for media that's sold, and that our clients aren't going to ever go away from needing help from what they do. And we want to provide the advice and the creative and, to recommend the best mix for their media, some of which we'll own and some of which we won't, some of which we'll execute and some of which will be programmatic for OTT and other things. And we should be the one-stop shop. And that's the goal. So it's a radio play, but it's a local media play. The direction that the world has gone is the other direction. If we're wrong and that in 5 years from now, all the media is done through AI and everybody is just trusting their computers to execute their plans, then we will have a lot of people in our industry and others that are out of work. But at the end of the day, the relationship matters. And being involved in our community matters, and being a trusted resource matters. And that's what we're betting on.
I could not agree with you more. And I think that relationship is so incredibly important. When you look at advertisers and they're spending their hard-earned money to grow their business on media or digital, they are, in my opinion, they're looking for expertise and people to help guide them to make those decisions. And nobody, I believe, can do a better job than the local AEs that work for companies like Connoisseur. And I know, hats off to Eric and Bill at Town Square. They've had some success doing that. And I know Chris at Saga is got a similar strategy. And I love that that's what you're doing. And the better we can serve our customers, the better off we're going to be as an industry.
I agree. And one of the things that I've heard time and time again when I've visited the alpha markets is how happy they are to hear so much focus on customer satisfaction.
And I know those local markets are incredibly important to you. I was talking to a mutual friend of ours the other day, and he happened to mention that you spend a lot of time streaming stations in around the country and some of the new alpha stations. And I love that you are that attentive to the details, and the programming and what's on the air really matters to you.
Yeah, whenever I feel like hearing like 3 or 4 Depends spots in the same stop set, I put on my stream.
Jeff, before I ask you your last bonus question, and again, thank you for taking the time. I know you are so incredibly busy right now and are about to digest this gigantic alpha deal, and congratulations again on that. But it means a lot that you continue to not only spend time with certainly your local staff, but people like me. And so thank you for that. What is your advice for young people right now that are looking to get into our business, and what would you say to them, and what would you predict for them in the future for the industry?
I think that if somebody wants to be in a career that gives, in the sales area, there's ultimately unlimited upside. Radio sellers are media sellers. They can sell everything. The average leading radio cluster in the market probably does 1% of the revenue. So if you can sell local radio alongside with digital and some of the other things that we're able to sell, there's tremendous upside. As far as programming, there are very few jobs left where you can have such a big impact in your communities. And if you love connecting and communicating like that, I think that radio is still a great opportunity. It's not as competitive as it once was for up and comers. And so you can stake your claim. There are very few jobs that are easier than they used to be. There are more jobs in media, but it's more competitive than ever. There's likely a lot of change in most every career opportunity that one could pursue right now. And so, be nimble, be open-minded, be humble, work hard, take direction, and seize the opportunities as they become available.
Jeff Warshaw, congratulations. Thank you again for taking the time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, man.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to Chachi Loves Everybody. If you like the show, we hope you leave us a 5-star rating and tell your friends. Make sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. This has been a Benztown McVeigh podcast production. Hosted and researched by Dave Chachi Dennis. Executive producer, Darren Silva. Producer and editor, Jake Urbanik. Show coordinator, Estefania Padilla. Marketing and distribution, Suzanne Aksu and Robbie Gessel.